Welcome to another episode of Otherworldly Encounters with Mike and Brian, and today we have guest Gregory. All right, Brian, so what are we drinking today with Gregory? I think the last time, I'm thinking we drank garage beer the last time we were with Gregory. I'm not sure.
That's a good, I don't remember at all. I have no idea.
But today we're going to go back old school.
Going back to the original.
Going back to the original.
All right. Well, cheers.
Cheers. Gregory turned us down on the beer.
So, Gregory, we're excited to have you back on today. Mike and I, we sit and we spend a lot of time thinking about what things we want to cover because there's so many things to cover. But you had such an impact on Mike and myself that not only did we do the episode with you, but we did a recap episode. And you've come up in conversation, I don't know how many times. And then you're kind enough to help introduce us to our last guest we had on, Dorie.
Yes.
So just appreciate all the kind of help and support you've given to us and, sharing your gifts with us.
Well, and thank you for having me back. It's a great compliment. And I just love the second episode because, I didn't know, I'm naive. So I just walked into this, and we just went off on a tangent while we were there. It's interesting how the spiritual realm sewed it together so that the public that were listening didn't understand all the private messages. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Then afterwards it unfolded. And it was, I laughed at the whole second episode where you two were talking about me. Because especially when Michael said, "Well, I went out and counted my ducks in the."
I did go and count my ducks. Hey, man,
so
you got to
maybe
debunk
took two of my ducks out again.
You can never be too certain, right? You got to go out and. I mean, the part about it is you got to. I mean, it was new to me. Like I never, like I think I said in the other podcast, like I never ever anticipated sitting down with a psychic medium, and I guess I really never had any. Negative or positive thoughts towards it. It was just more of neutral. Like I just didn't have an interest in it, I guess. So when you gave me the ducks, I'm like, I'm gonna go out there and just look at some photos that I had, and just to make sure you just didn't pull them off because I was like, all right, here we go.
I think it's an interesting point. We both went in. I mean, you were the first time I've talked to anyone with any kind of abilities, right? Okay. And so I came into this as a skeptic, and right. I mean, that's our position, and it has to be because so much of what we see and interact with is debunkable, right? So. Sure. So how do you know what's real and what's not real? And it's not until you have, and Mike, you and I talked about it a lot, a firsthand experience to actually push you in one direction or the other to say, oh shit, maybe there's something to it. Be it, did you take ducks out of my Jeep and just re-get them? Or like, where do things come from?
Right.
It's fascinating.
And the whole thing about that episode, it was, like I said, it was a great episode, but there was some events that happened prior to it. So it was pretty fresh. Obviously your mom had passed. So
right.
Gregory's focus was primarily on you, which was, I was perfectly fine with. But it was after the fact that, with my time with you, Gregory, that was when I was like, all right, this guy is legit. So that's when I became a full believer in what Gregory's message is and his abilities. So, I don't know, man.
It's just profound to me because when I listened to your side of the story, when you did the second episode of that, everything began to fit together for me as well. Because I remember you all saying, well, he said this, and he said this about my mom, and then he mentioned my mother's sister, and then he mentioned it again, and how all of that was hewn together, in a way that none of us were realizing that your mother and everybody in heaven that represented you was privately coming through to let you know subtly that they were with you.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. It was fascinating. It was really neat.
I think your gift's so fascinating because you can't turn it on or off. It's just on, and it's your ability to interpret it. And so for our viewers and our listeners, we've got some of Mike's family sitting in here, and you opened the door and just immediately, who is, and I forget what you said, but it was like clockwork, like right into it.
Yeah, it just comes as soon as I come toward a person. Even before you call, I begin to pick up messages about someone on the phone. So, and it's something I can't turn off. And I had a young gentleman that I took in years ago, and he said, after 3 years of living at your home, I realized you live in two worlds at once, and that you're talking to a whole different world at the same time that you're living in this one and interacting in here, this world. And until he said that, I never realized that because it's so common for me.
Right. And the other thing too is like, because I know you mentioned this in our when we spoke the first time, is like even if you throw out names now, they may not have a meaning right now, but they could potentially have some type of meaning in the future.
Correct. And I'll come in to a session, and usually it starts because your ancestors gather in, and your angels are your ancestors, or the ancestors are your angels are your ancestors. Yeah. So when they come into the place, they begin to gather, and they'll give names of nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, people who are living, as well as those who are deceased or in the transitional heavenly planes. And they do that to correlate the ancestry or lineage representing you in that moment. Your mother's people. Who is the name Pete to one of you people? Who is Pete?
That's also to our gallery over there.
Okay, well, I get the name Pete. I get it from over
Well,
here.
I mean, we did have a thing about Peter the Dolphin.
Okay, that's to you then. Correct.
No, it's definitely not to me.
No, I mean, but well, that's okay. But there's the name Pete coming through.
We just can't get away from the dolphin stuff, can we?
We
It just
cannot.
keeps coming back.
And who is John?
Well, that my mother had a brother named John.
That's to you. Okay. So they give examples as we go too, because you know they're working with the Forrest Gump of Christianity here, as well. Here, that's me. So they'll give examples as we go, like your mom's interacting here as well, giving examples. John, is John living?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that he's living.
Yeah.
So they'll give names to represent who's representing you in this moment, not just to your mom's people, but that would, if it's a male they bring forward, either living or in the heavenly planes, that represents your grandfather or to your mom's people. Does that make sense? And who is Ed or Ted?
There was a family friend named Ted.
Oh, that's
I don't
who was
know.
that to? Who is that to your mom or to?
Yeah, they were friends.
Okay.
He's
Well,
deceased.
Well, okay, that's why. So I'm trying to get away from that because now your mom's showing me a Nestle's Crunch bar, by the way. So I'm trying to get away or back to that. Does that make sense to you?
Okay.
Did you just have a Nestle's Crunch bar or?
Couldn't tell you the last time I've had a Nestle Crunch. It sounds delicious. but
Well,
I've had
there's
one
something
some-
correlated to that, and maybe it's not. It looks like a Nestle's Crunch bar to me. So
Interesting. Do you, when you get these, and I don't think we talked about it last time, I remember when we were discussing how this worked for you, and I still remember it vividly because it was such an interesting explanation. The way you explained what you do to us is like standing in a crowded room and you hear voices, and it's very hard to pick out who is speaking. And that's kind of where you're trying to interpret. But I'm curious, is it just like an audio thing to you, or do you also visually see?
I visually see, the scriptures mention know without knowing. God knows without knowing. And when you're in that land, you just know without knowing. And people say, well, how do you know you're talking to my mother? Well, how do I know I'm talking to Brian? I mean, just because you're here physically, each individual that God created is a single vibration, a single orchestrated note. And so that's why I'm familiar with who they are. And that's why I don't have to be here to already know your mother and get messages from her, not just about you, but in general conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I converse with people that I make friends with in heaven as well. The more I'm around you, the more I'm around your people.
Interesting.
So, I befriend a lot of people, but I just know. And then they validate it and confirm it by the things that they give that only you will know. And it's not things that you can find on the internet. Like, I keep my profile low and I don't let people know who I am. And I don't know how he knew some of this stuff he was bringing forth.
Damn.
It was so
Legit.
funny.
Because then, you're thinking about that. And then, like, the next day, I was driving to the office or something, and you called and you're like, because you were talking about Michelle, which I didn't realize that Shelley's name was Michelle for, I don't know, the longest time. I think actually after she passed, to be perfectly honest with you. And you were talking about OCD, and I'm like, no idea, but I can debunk this real quick. So I called her husband up, and I'm like, and he's like, no, man, she definitely has OCD, and we used to mess with her all the time. And I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
Didn't get to debunk that one either.
Yeah, it's funny. And again, they'll give things, because I'm not a mind reader, so they'll give things to you, for instance, like that, where you research that and you find out the validated part of that on your own, so to speak. And that's the part that I kind of hope we talk about too a bit, about how we're conditioned as people to believe. Lots of people think this is taboo, or that I don't represent who I represent. You mentioned, how do we know that he's authentic? The scriptures say you'll know them by their fruits. Either I produce good fruit or I produce bad fruit. A city divided against itself, Jesus says, cannot stand. You can't serve two masters. Pardon me, I got my tooth in, so I'm talking like this.
Well, I think it's like you think about, we live in this digital age, right?
Yeah.
Where we expect to see a video on something, and we expect to have a photograph of something. And so when you're speaking of the spiritual realm, it's something that me and Brian and we just don't right now physically see that, right? So it's hard. I can see where it's hard for some people to get behind.
Yeah. What do you consider tangible evidence? It's interesting. So like for the UFO world, show me a craft, show me a alien being, show me some metamaterial, show me something physically that tells me this is real or this isn't. But when we're talking about this realm, that's very hard to produce unless you're producing things that are so personal to someone that they say there's no way that anyone could know that. And the
Right.
example of you with my mom was, I'll have a Michelob. No one on this planet except those very close to our family would know that's 100% something she routinely said.
Yeah, and then if you also take that over to the paranormal side, right? Give me a shadow figure, give me a disembodied voice, give me something like a cupboard door opening. That is proof that in the paranormal world that something does exist.
I want to cycle back real quick before I forget. You said something, and we talked about it with Dorie. You said you're born with a vibration. And Dorie talked about high vibration. Right. And we've covered that a couple different times, and it's such something that I have no awareness of. And in my mind, and I'm definitely OCD and probably slightly autistic, I try to, how do I connect all of these dots? And it's interesting, you hear theories about Egyptian pyramids and a vibration frequency where they could be a power plant. And then you hear about vibration in terms of spirituality. What is it that you're talking about when you use that term?
Well, that's what I really loved about your session with Dorie and the things that she brought forward. Number one, I'm just touching back up a little bit about, how we are preconditioned because we listen and for instance, some of our churches, they don't have you read the scriptures or memorize scriptures. They tell you the scriptures, and so therefore it's not burnt within the heart of you. And so what I'm saying is that politics is the same way, because we don't research. And Dorie mentioned this, and so did you gentlemen on that podcast, that, seek it out on your own. And what rings true to you, just don't believe what someone tells you. And that's what I was talking about with these gifts and why you know them as their fruit. Don't just believe me. Go out and research it and look it up. We have Google now, and you can look up all kinds of wonderful things about the direction that you feel you need to go. And so, I wanted to touch upon that as well. But as far as the vibration, I brought some crystals to demonstrate to you how we can raise our vibration. This plane, we're born into this plane, and when you're born, you're this perfect light that came from heaven. And you were so long before you got here, but now you got this body. And even though you can't perceive or talk or understand this world, you use your perception or your sixth sense in order to establish residence here. It's like, if we moved to China, we'd have to learn a whole new language, and the scenery is totally different, and the culture is different. So we'd have to acclimate to that. So we do that. But as we acclimate here as babies and as children, even into adolescence times, we acclimate to this part, and then the vibration of us, of this glowing little, sweet little light. Everybody likes to hold a baby because it's precious. Mm-hmm. So because of the energy of the baby. So, as we acclimate to this world, we set that aside and we step into the physical realm or the conscious realm. Then we lose sight of that, and our vibration lowers somewhat. When we study and when we seek out a spiritual path, we're actually trying subconsciously or ultra consciously to raise our vibration and get back to where we came from, so to speak. I mean, as a child and as a young adult, my time with Jesus was wonderful. I mean, he was my teacher. We stayed side by side all the time. I leaned or depended upon him all that time. But as I grew up, I began to become more part of this world. Not that I ever lost that, because we established that love and friendship when I was younger and that dependency on him. But sometimes I got off the beaten path because of that, and so my vibration would lower because I'm too much into this world, so to speak. The scriptures make mention of it, per se, and I won't go into that, but getting back to vibration. So how do we raise our vibration? Because how do we go from the conscious mind to the superconscious mind, or what sometimes they call the Christ mind? How do we get up there? Well, there's ways to elevate that. And this is part of what Heaven was talking about before I got here early this morning, because I got up at 3 o'clock, believe it or not, listening to Heaven all morning about what we're going to talk about. And so the high priest went into the Holy of Holies, into the Jewish temple. He goes in there once a year to atone for the sins of the people. He goes up on the platform, and there's this little room that he goes into, and there's this 12-foot curtain about 8 inches thick. And only he can go in there once a year to atone for God's people, because he meets God in that room. They tie a rope around his waist in case he dies while he's in front of God. But when he goes in that room, he wears a breastplate of crystals, 12 crystals. Why does he wear a breastplate of crystals? And what are the crystals on the breastplate? Crystals raise your vibration. You're an instrument. The Bible says, I'm an instrument. Make me an instrument, O Lord, so to speak. That's paraphrase. So there are ways you can raise vibration. On the way up here, they were talking about the different ways you can raise vibration. Prayer. You all kind of know about prayer or thought and how we can pray or raise ourselves to that level, so to speak. But when we burn incense, it changes the atmosphere of the room. It cleanses the room. It cleanses you when you breathe it in. So you've got incense, you have meditation, you have things that raise vibration. Crystals attune you, like if I were a piano and you came in and you used that little thing to tune me, and that little tuning thing they have to attune each note. So part of vibration is attuning the physical body. I said I wanted to talk a little bit about the pineal gland earlier and the kundalini, which is the spinal cord, because the soul of you is in the pit of your stomach. It's called the seat of the soul. And the spinal cord, the kundalini, runs these two, they look like snakes, on the pharmacy little cup. Their logo is the kundalini. And so this power or this energy that comes up from the soul or the pit of your stomach goes up your spinal cord like you're in a submarine, and through the pineal gland, that little air pocket in the center of your head, that's what they call the crystal cave. And that's where, when I mentioned to you, where did you see that red car at? Remember that? You said, well, I had a lot of red cars.
It's true.
Trying to, debunk what's he saying that for. Remember that? But I was demonstrating to you that where you saw that red car is the pineal gland, that crystal cave. And that is kind of like, if you were to be a coal miner, you would wear this helmet with a flashlight on it. And so that opens that flashlight to you. The pineal gland opens up that screen to you. But it's like you were down deep inside yourself, and the spinal cord is that scope that leads to the opening within the mind for you to see.
Oh, so your spinal cord is like the periscope.
Correct. Thank you. So that's thank you.
It's worth saying too, the pineal gland, and we've talked about it on this show before, but the pineal gland we believe to be responsible for the production of DMT, which we think's what takes us through whatever dream state. But then beyond that, there's a huge pine cone outside the Vatican, and that's meant to represent the pineal gland.
it
And then
is.
the top of the Pope's staff is also a pine cone, which is also to represent the pineal gland. So it's a very important thing in the church.
Most definitely. A lot of that is symbolic. Even the Pope's hat, I don't know what you call it.
I don't know.
Hat
Seems fair.
Okay. The shape of that bishop's cap that the bishop wears. There's a picture of me that, for the first time, I started doing those FaceTime readings, because I normally am in two worlds, so I don't want to look at the phone, pardon me. I don't want to look down at the phone while I'm in heaven and trying to juggle these worlds, and then, have to get disconnected in between trying to look at you on the phone. But I did that, and all of a sudden, one of the ladies said to me, the first session I ever did on the phone was about a month ago. She said, "I don't mean to stop you," pardon me. "I don't mean to stop you midstream here," but she said, "There's this light above your head like a halo." And she said, "I wouldn't have brought that up, but," she said, "there was an angel standing behind you in that light." And so I took a moment, and I saw it, because I see it all the time around everybody. Everybody has an aura and a halo per se, depending on... Everybody has a halo. Everybody has a light around them. And depending on what your position is in your life, or, for instance, when I come to a holy person, I see a holy light around them. That signifies to me that that person's like me or similar to me. So when you see that light, and I have these pictures on the phone for you too, by the way. So if you want to incorporate this.
Oh,
with
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I noticed it, but I didn't really notice it on the phone until she mentioned it, because it's normal to see that to me. So, and when she pointed it out, I took a picture of it. And there's no lights on in the room. I do readings in just normal lighting. I don't turn the lights on in my house. I like to just sit there comfortably, and enjoy my moment. So I have a picture of that. But that light is represented by the bishop's cap, because it's in the form of a flame above your head. And so that's what that represents when the Holy Spirit came upon them in cloven fire in the book of Acts, when the first church was established in the book of Acts, when the disciples of Christ was able to speak to people, the whole crowd in their own language. Even though they were dispersed from all kinds of countries and different languages, they were able to speak to them with that cloven tongue above their head. And so that's another part of the symbolic part of the Catholic Church. You understand? So it's all spiritually connected. Again, don't believe me and just take for granted that what I'm saying is true. Go look it up. I like Dorie's, getting back to Dorie, I like Dorie, she delved into that a bit, and you all delved into it, that we don't take things at face value. It kind of reminds me of the Tim Cast. You ever watch that? Mm-mm. Because he does political things, and I watch him a lot because he delves into the stories or the things that he shares with his listeners. He just doesn't take it at face value. He researches everything before he comes forward with it. And we as a people need to do that, not just to trust government or how the church feels like we should live or what we've been brought up by our family or tradition, the taboos in our life. Don't step on the crack, it'll break your mother's back. As a kid, I would step on it just to see.
Definitely.
Right.
Been there.
Didn't happen. So we come up with all these taboos, but you're an individual who needs to seek out truth for yourself on your own level and to build from that. And so how do you do that? Getting back to the question about ascension or a higher vibration. You learn mantras and decrees, and the Catholic Church has decrees. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. The Our Father, and all of us know the Lord's Prayer. That is actually a decree or a prayer. So learn these things, and Scripture when you read scripture, it burns within the heart of you and it raises the vibration of you. So there's all kinds of things. Incense, gathering in the crowd and praying, or not just praying, but also singing can raise the vibration. Lighting candles, because anything you do in the tangible realm, like lighting a candle, you're igniting that part of you that clicks the switch to the spiritual. It's like turning on a light switch. All these things help that you do in the tangible, physical realm. And if we were to have the lights off in this room, and we probably need, if I take these crystals and I rub them together, I have to do it in the dark. But these things will glow. So, and if I rub them long enough, they'll spark. And not only that, they smell like caps, you know, when you used to shoot a cap gun.
No, yeah.
But when a person holds a crystal, this is rose quartz, and when you study chakras, which are energy parts of us or cycles, or they look like clocks to me. But these energy, and you have thousands of them because you're made of cells, neutrons, protons, electrons. But you have major chakras like the heart chakra. So when you have issues to the heart through loss of a loved one or stress, then you would hold the quartz crystal to clear up the heart. And so this raises the vibration. These two crystals, this is quartz crystal and this is rose quartz crystal.
Is that legit, Brian? Since you're
I was actually thinking about that when, as soon as Gregory sat them down, I knew exactly what they were. Just full disclosure.
And these two crystals, going back to the breastplate of the high priest, were on the breastplate of the high priest. He wore the 12 crystals not just to represent the 12 tribes, but to raise his vibration like the crystal in a radio tower. There's a crystal in a radio tower that helps emit the signal and bring clarity to the radio. Well, you're the radio. And so when you hold a crystal, your cell tower is your spinal cord. And so you're changing that instrument, or you're aligning yourself and attuning yourself to a higher vibration by holding these crystals. So, and if I could, and I'll do this later and we'll record it in the dark so you can put it on here too. But when I rub these two crystals together, they will begin to show you the energy or the light. It's not just a spark. So when you squeeze a crystal, you're emitting that energy within the human body. A crystal watch runs on crystals. It doesn't run on a battery. But when that metal presses against the crystal, it causes that empowerment to work the clock. And again, you're a single vibration, a single note, but in order to attune yourself to the physical body, it takes specific things to help clean that instrument up in order to receive the proper signal or the proper clarity. You understand what I mean? And we could go on and on and on about that.
Is amethyst a crystal?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Amethyst.
Dorie told me I need to get some amethyst.
Yeah, that's
Set next to my bed.
Yeah, and amethyst is a lovely crystal, actually. Amethyst is purple. Mm-hmm. And so it also represents the Immaculate Heart of Christ, or the blood of Christ, or the sacrifice of Christ. And with each crystal, there's a different angel. Like Chamuel, the angel of love or charity would be with this crystal. The rose color, the color even of the rainbows match the angels. So you have different colors, you have different crystals for different things. And the amethyst has a lot of, I want to say it's all inclusive, but it's not. But when you're dealing with communication, it does deal with the throat chakra, so to speak, of the spiritual. So, and again, these align all those parts of you too. If you want to see like I see, then raise your vibration. I do these series of decrees, these prayers that I say so fast it sounds like I'm humming them. And it's actually taking me like from this realm in an elevator to the higher conscious or the higher mind, and places me right in heaven where everybody is. And so that, in essence, is what we as the people That in essence, that in essence is what we as a people are trying to do, to raise our vibration and get back to where we were when we first came here.
So does the vibration, is it correlated with like density? Like the levels of density?
Yes. And when I talk about ascension, you know, I'm so sorry.
You should have had the garage beer, Gregory.
Yeah, I should have had something. Yeah, I was thinking trailer park trash beer. That's what I should have had. But no, but we're all trying to raise our vibration, and they call that raising your ascension. And the whole reason I do this is not just for the sake of God's people and to bring them up out of the darkness and set their feet into the light, but it's because my long-term goal or my destined goal is to see God when I pass. I don't want to see anybody else but our Heavenly Father. And so I'm trying, and I'm doing a good job on my own here. I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of raising my own vibration and winning my ascension here so that I don't have to wait till I cross over to come to that ascension. Does that make sense? Because the more I help people, the more I rise to a higher place vibrationally. I have people all over the world that every time I talk to them or they call me, they'll say, I think about you all the time and I pray about you all the time. Well, I have thousands and thousands of people praying for me. What is that doing to my vibration? You understand? Right. Where's that putting me? What's raising me up into the higher level or the higher mind? Does that make sense to you?
How much of that? So this is fascinating to me, and I have to ask, like, how much of that, just knowing what you just said, you have thousands of people praying for you. Is it your knowledge and belief of exactly what you're talking about that you believe in, what you think escalates you? And I'm asking that, do you think this is a placebo effect and what's actually happening external of you doesn't matter? Or do you think that's actually really being a part of it? Or do you think you're your kind of own energy source?
Well, I feel like it empowers that energy.
Okay.
You understand what I mean? Jesus said, where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. And so if people are thinking about Gregory Sanderson, and lots of people say, well, call me on Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's and say, my whole family gathered today and you're all we talked about. Well, if everybody's talking about me in a positive way, that's going to raise the vibration of me kind of automatically, kind of like Amway.
So
You mentioned,
so when
you know.
so does that, like, so when people are talking about you or praying for you and your vibration is getting higher, so does that intensify like what's going on in your mind? Like, so you go from a few hundred voices to now you have a few thousand voices.
Or maybe you're focused down to just a few.
Yeah.
I believe it helps the focal part, but I've always been available. I've always been available to the billions of souls that are in heaven. You know, I lost a dear friend years ago, and he had bought me a Jewish prayer cloth, and right after he passed, I cleared out his bedroom, and he had a twin-sized mattress on the floor, and I decided to lay there and pray to God, and I put that prayer blanket around me as I was praying, and I fell asleep in a fetal position. And I woke up in heaven in a kneeling position, and I looked up and there were elders. There was an altar in front of me, and there were elders surrounding me, and they were anointing me for a higher calling. For instance, like when I became a minister, I was anointed to the church by the elders. And so this was like that. And after they anointed me, I stood up and I looked behind me, and there were millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of souls everywhere I looked, and over the mountains and everywhere I looked, all I saw were these golden people. And they said, we are going to gather all of our energy together, and through our ancestors, or through each generation or tribe of ancestors, we are going to shoot the messages to you and cameo people from here in order for you to bring communication to our people on earth. So that's what that was like to me. So I've had that connection for
So is this like more like on the lines of, like, if you think of like a prophet, right? So, you know, Jesus had other different prophets. Is this kind of like the same
Sure. Yeah.
status, or can you?
It is.
Is it without? I don't know. I'm trying not to sound like a jerk asking the question, but it's just kind of like, people are like, oh, so he claims to be a prophet. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like in a negative way, but I don't mean it as a negative way. I'm just asking.
Well, it's not, and that speaking of trailer park crash, I feel like calling me a medium or a psychic puts me kind of in that level, because if you notice on my website, I'm Gregory Sanderson, emissary. I'm an ambassador of who I represent. Although I have these abilities, to communicate with the spiritual realm and be a mediator, but everybody in this type of field is a mediator. Jesus was a mediator between God and man. So, in a way, I look at myself as that, as a prophet, because these aren't the only gifts, just because this is highlighted in me in order for me to reach a more massive amount of people, to bring the truth that this revealed to them through me, that Jesus really did do what he said he did, and the fact of that is you to live forever. So yeah, because I can go into a hospital room in an ICU unit and pray people up out of comas. So this is one of many, many gifts. But then I'm called accordingly. It's not uncommon for me to not just work with the physical plane, but when people have an overdose and they're in a coma, or they're on their deathbed and they're about ready to cross, I have the ability to go to where they are, which is between the doorway or the veil, and it's at that veil that was written to in the Jewish temple that we never finished talking about the Holy of Holies when the Jewish priest goes in. But when Jesus passed away, that curtain from top to bottom was written to. The scriptures make note of that. The moment he died, that curtain was written in two from top to bottom. It's like 8 inches thick or 12 inches thick. It was 12 inches or 12 feet high, I remember that. But that means we no longer have to have a high priest. Jesus opened the pathway or the veil back for mankind to go in and out of that pathway or that doorway individually by yourself. You no longer need the high priest to do that. So lots of times people are contemplating, well, do I stay or do I go? And so I have the ability to minister to them or counsel them to see if they want to stay or go. Lots of that is prodded by people here on earth. There are YouTube videos where some of the people have been in a podcast with me, and they're talking about their experiences of their sister, who one of them was from New York, and Michelle came to me while she was in a coma and was talking about getting ready to make her preparations to pass, and what she wanted me to relay to her family members and her friends who I knew. And so prior to the passing, I confirmed the things that she said. I didn't even know she was in a coma. And I called and said, your sister's talking to me. She's in a coma. And so that's validated as well. But she was getting ready to leave. And then the moment she left, she came to me in the middle of the night. And so then I called her family members again and validated and confirmed the things that she said going out to them. So because I have this ability to stand there between the two planes. Another example is a young fella had overdosed, and he'd gone into a comatose state, and he was put in for about 4 months into a rest home, and he never came to. And his family asked me to go and see if I could prod him back. Well, he didn't want to go, because once you step through the veil into heaven, there's such an empowerment of love that's totally different than what you're used to here or accustomed to, and it's something that we seek when we try to find a relationship or look for solidity in that. But there's such a magnetic pull of that, and especially when his grandparents that he loved were there, he didn't want to come back. And the further he would step through that doorway or gateway, the more empowered he was to stay, and he didn't want to come back. Does it make sense? So sometimes I can counsel with you, but it's not my choice whether you stay or go, it's yours. So there's lots of different parts of this, but I would have to be a self-proclaimed prophet, but I don't really call myself that, although that's the underlying part of it.
Yeah, I just know that there's a lot of religious hardliners out there, right? And then
Yeah.
once you start talking about, I can communicate with the spiritual realm,
Yeah.
or I've sat at the feet of Jesus or
Right.
whatever, that it just goes into this whole different,
Right.
field
Well,
of hate, I guess, or whatever,
Oh, it
idolizing a false prophet or whatever. So that's why I was
That's funny. I was
bringing it
thinking
up.
about that this morning too, because as a new Christian or people that are just enlightened for the first time, whether you're Hindu or whatever, or Christian or Baptist or Buddha, it doesn't make any difference where you come from. Once you're enlightened, you get kind of fanatic about it. And I hear lots of people say, "Well, I'm gifted too, and I just did this and this and this, and I can heal you." And and understand, that newness of that, but they have a long way to go from where they are. But or someone to say, "Well, I just had this profound thing I said to this person, and it came true," and they're just shocked that they can do that. But really, all of us can do that. But when you first open up to it, it can become like a bit fanatical, or a bit, I don't know what a good word for that is, but you can really get lost in that. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I've been thinking about this. It does make sense. How did you choose regular quartz and then rose quartz? Is there something specific about these two pieces to you, or about what they are?
Well, basically, these sit on my table when you come for a session, and I just keep them. I don't need really anything to attune me to this, because I'm just there all the time. I don't have to meditate. It's like, and I don't have to click on the light switch to it, because I'm just there back and forth. And I can't turn that off. It's like I don't have a switch. So that's different. But I leave these there just for some people most of the people come heartbroken to me, that's lost a loved one, or they're going through such traumatic times, or
Grief counseling almost.
yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And and helping them to get from one place or one level of life to another. For instance, a lady yesterday, she moved to Connecticut, and she left a month ago from California to move back home to Connecticut, and she's living in her car. So in order for me to counsel her, I have to see ahead for her, so that she doesn't feel like she's going to be in the car the rest of her life. And so we project from current to where she's headed within the next few weeks, the next few months, and I help set that up to put her back in a place where she's not overwhelmed by the stress of what she's going through. So sometimes in life, most times in life, it's like we're standing on the seashore of life, and all of a sudden a tsunami comes and it overwhelms us and beats us against the retaining wall of that shore. And we get so wore out from life's issues and being battered, and the salt water gets in our eyes. And even though we have faith that we can move forward and go forward, and we have this belief in the spiritual, we're beaten down by the human side of life. One of my prayers is, forgive me for getting in this human condition. And sometimes I didn't put myself here in this human condition. It was influenced by people around me or situations in my life that beat me against that wall. And people come to me because I'm able to remove that cloud from in front of their eyes, or that salt water, and look further for them to the future, in order to reinstate hope with that person. Hebrews, the 11th chapter, the first verse says, "Faith is the substance of things that we hope for. It's the evidence of things we cannot see." People come to me because they're wore out, they're battered, they're bruised, they're broken. And so with these eyes, I'm able to see ahead for them, not just in the current moment, and also look back at the past to bring forward what caused them to be where they're at in the moment. And then we take a look to the future of where they're going, such as I did with that lady yesterday. So that's what this is about. It's to pick you up from the depths of discouragement and anxiety and put you back up on the path that you were created to go on, to walk gleefully through life. Jesus said, "I want you to have life and have it more abundantly," but sometimes it's hard to be in an abundant life. That's
a heavy cross to bear, and I'm sure when when you have those conversations and you lead somebody down that road, it's got to be a very positive feeling for you, for someone that doesn't have the gift. But I'm curious to flip the script. And when you're having a conversation with somebody like Dorie, who also has some gifts, well, how does that conversation change for you? Like what is a typical conversation between you guys? Are you talking about like, here's how I do it and here's how she may do it? Or like, what does that look like?
Well, it's also, Dorie kind of like comes from all kinds of backgrounds. Her people are from another country,
Right.
and and her family came through a lot of, wars and things, and she knows so many languages and things, and so I don't rely on how I perceive or see things. Like she wants to talk to the Arcturians, well then I just go to where they are and talk to them. There are different planes. It's not just, we share this plane with what they call the genie or the genie, or what they call genies, because there is another group of spirits that share this plane with us, although most people can't see them. They live in deserted places, they live in caves. And when you go in to disturb them, they can move things in that place to get you scared, so you get out of their place. But we share the plane with the jinn, and there's male and female attributes to that. So there's much more that goes on than meets the eye. And when I speak to people from other countries who believe in different gods or gurus, I go to the guru. I don't go on my own. I don't go on how I feel about that. I just go to their guru or to their spiritual leader. I shut that part off of me where I want to question that. I just go and do. Does it make sense? Because Dorie, God love her, she is multifaceted, so to speak, and she just absorbs like a sponge and always had. So with her, when she says, I want a session, I have to really kind of research things before I step into it, so that I go to it in a way to bring her the information that she wants to receive, if that makes sense. Sometimes I'll Google things like some of the alien races, and then that pulls me to that race, so that I have an understanding of who they are, and then I just let them speak to me.
Interesting. So there's no differentiation for how you're receiving information, be it a human being or an ET or whatever. It's
Correct.
just, so your mind's eye, you're focusing on whatever that is, and that's what starts coming through.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the focal. That's exactly it.
And so you and Dorie obviously have similar gifts, but are there any gifts that either one of you had that the other one doesn't? Is there something that you're able to do that Dorie can? Is there something that Dorie can do that you can't?
Well, that's kind of like we as people. There's things you could do I can't do. But I would say kind of yes to that and kind of no to that, because in the spiritual, it's as broad as you want it to be, or you can go any direction with that, so to speak. Whatever you set your mind to, and that's the neat thing about it too. I just go with the flow of that, and so that doesn't mean she does have different gifts because of her personality. I mean, she's working with celestial beings that help you on an earthly plane, or spiritual beings. She goes beyond the physical of you, and she gets to the root of the situation, not the cause of where you are, and the cause you are in the physical realm. You understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, but it's different, but it's the same. But she has a lot of different avenues of gifts than I do. She's a healer as well, and I really appreciate you guys bringing her out, because we kind of brought her out of the closet with this.
That's what she said.
And so I'm so proud of her to step forward, because she is so gifted, and I have so many gifted friends and people that I know and colleagues that I would love to have here on the show to pull them up out of the closet. Or so that I say the closet because people put you in this shell, or they confine you because of their beliefs. And so lots of people won't come out and be like you admired her for coming out and sharing how she felt or her viewpoint, even though there may be people listening today that doesn't agree with that or with the situations here. It doesn't make any difference. And research it and find out whatever avenue or spiritual path you want to go, or how you want to go and how you want to take it. The key to this whole spiritual thing is what you're willing to give to humanity. It's not what you're wanting to receive, it's how you give. The gifts are ignited in people because of their heart, or how much of themselves they give to others. It's not based on anything. If you want to really, really take a spiritual path, go out and do random acts of kindness for people. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be anything big. It could be somebody in the grocery store and say, "Ma'am, you look awfully lovely in that orange outfit that you have on." Or handing a kid at McDonald's through the drive-through window $2, and brighten somebody's day just by little things. Because what that does, give and you receive, is a natural law of exchange. My whole life, I've given everything of myself away because of how I see. Jesus describes it as like this man sees a pearl in the field, and it represents the kingdom of heaven. He said, this man sees a pearl in the field, so he goes out and he sells everything he has to acquire that pearl of great price in that field. And nothing else really matters to me, but I want that pearl of great price. You understand? Mm-hmm. So my whole life, I've given everything away to keep me from being in this confined world and want things that hold me back from the root of who I am or my purpose. And so I've given everything away. It wasn't until recently I stopped doing that. I say to people now, I'm no longer able to give in that capacity. I have the capacity to do that, but I'm not going to pay your rent now. I'm not going to help you with raise your children or bring you into my home, because I've retired from that at my age. And so, but my focal now is more of an audience of individually sharing with people instead of having people in my home. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I hope we're not getting off the tangent of this, but
No.
But again, given you will receive. I wouldn't be this gifted if I hadn't given of myself my whole entire life until 2017, when I stopped giving everything away. I never owned a home. I never had anything, but I changed that when I said I retired from that, and I no longer am able to give to that capacity. But I'll pray for you to see for you. So then my world changed, and now I just built a home that I've been in for 3 years. I built it by myself with my own money. And before I moved into the home, everything we put into the home was brand new. Nothing came from the past that was old except my bird cage, little things like that. So, it's giving and you receive. It doesn't make any difference what you give or the way you give, as long as you just give out of your heart and don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, and just give. And it doesn't make any difference what you give, but the measure you give on, you'll receive back. So when you give of yourself, the natural cosmic law of exchange is you will receive. It may not come, if you give money to somebody, it may not come in a monetary way. A good example, too, of money situation. Why do you give 10% of your tithes to the church, or an offering above that to the church or to God's people? Because you're igniting more money to you. But then again, that's in the church, and that's one way we learn how to generate money. But whatever you give comes back to you on every wave. If you were to take a loaf of bread, and the scripture said, Jesus says, cast your bread upon the water, and soon it'll come back on every wave. So if you throw a loaf of bread into the ocean, all of the aquatic life are going to be fed by that. And you're feeding an ocean full of aquatic life that comes back to you and feeds you back. Mm. You understand? Mm-hmm. So if you give, the universe says you'll receive. So whatever measure you give, and basically whatever you inwardly want the most, is what you'll receive. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
So it really comes down to giving because you want to, not because you feel like you have to. Because there
Correct.
are those out there who's like, well, we have to go do this, this, and that because that's the only way I'm going to get into heaven, and that is like the most important thing to me.
No, no. When you see heaven as the greatest, you see heaven as a great price because the pearl of your life is in heaven, your mother. So you have these shows, and you're seeking a spiritual path, regardless of how it comes, in order to attain that pearl of your mother, to be with your mother when you pass. You understand? Because nothing will stand in the way of you and your mother, your birth mother. You understand what I mean? So nothing stands in the way of what I see to the future of me. Nothing stands in the way. I had a lady years ago say, Greg, you'll meet lots of people and come into lots of loving relationships with people, but your mind is set on God, and they may get up on the path and walk with you toward the direction of that. But if they decide to falter a little bit, you'll push them off the path and be continual to what you see. And that's me. I stay focused on my main directive. This world does not matter to me. This world is not my home. You want to talk about aliens? We're all aliens in this world. The reason you have this show is because the spirit of you or the soul of you or the person of you knows you're an alien and that you're here all by yourself in this world. How do you think these aliens feel when they deal with us as people? You know, they come down here and they kind of walk lightly among us. You mentioned the orbs that people are seeing. They're kind of like coming in a little bit to show themselves, kind of like Dorie coming out of the closet, because we're coming into a higher ascended time, frequency-wise or atmospheric-wise, to raise our vibration anyway. And you just have to step into the vibration of that as you go, as you're still raising your own vibration. Does that make sense?
So I read somewhere that they say now, like the Earth itself has like reached density level 4, right? Do you think that is why we are starting to see more of the aliens?
I say yes to that, and that again, to me, that's an ascension level of the whole planet, of the whole cosmos or universe, because everything's taken a level up, and therefore, yeah. So, and as we get closer to the return of Christ, whether people believe in that or not, the whole reason why we're raising to a higher vibration and level and a level of understanding of the reality of things is because, and we're taking off these false sunglasses that we used to see a different way and that was delusional, because we're learning truth. And truth, according to the scriptures and according to Jesus, is it's truth that sets you free. Nothing else sets you free. So if you want truth, then find the truth on your own terms. And like Dorie said, it'll ring true to your heart. You're with the right person or in the right vibration of what you're seeking. And you guys discussed that with her too, and you agreed with her on that. We haven't even talked about Dorie yet, have we?
Not really. One thing I want to say.
Tiptoed around it.
One thing I want to say is, I have a science background, and it's just the way my mind works is I have to put everything in a box. Here is how I categorize something. Here is the box this goes into. And it wasn't until we started talking about UFOs and we got on the subject of Christopher Bledsoe, which is a fascinating individual. And some other time I would love to talk to him about him to you and get your take. But his take is, and he shows orbs on his social media feed all the time, but his take, these aren't ETs. He believes that these are angels, or these are descendants of the god Hathor, which we talked a little bit to Dorie about. So forget about, and again, this is like where my mind's trying to say, if I see an unidentified flying object, a UAP in the sky, this is ET, right? ET phone home. That is what I'm picturing in my head, but there's nothing that says that that's what it is, but it's my mind trying to force it into a box.
Well, and that's true. And it could be either or, because they can appear how they want to appear in people as well. But you are correct in that the soul of you, sometimes you'll be in a room and you'll see a spark of light out of nowhere. And that isn't because of the pupil, even though that can be, but usually sparks of light or orbs that you see or film are ancestors or spirits that are around you. That is true. That is very true. When it comes to the larger orbs people are seeing, that's more alienistic type of thing. That's how I perceive it. And again, all of these things are to get your attention. Another thing, from the peripheral view, sometimes you see a shadow of a person beside you, and you look and they're gone, or you could have felt like somebody was there. But that's all the spiritual realm trying to open the doorway of the psyche for you to believe that's real. Again, we're conditioned as people, and lots of the things when we study, lots of the things that we should have received to the scriptures were taken out of the scriptures to keep people from knowing too much, so to speak, or rising above the hierarchy of some of the churches or people. But that's the scribes and Pharisees of the Old Testament as well that Jesus dealt with. Kind of reminds me of the government today. That's another subject, I know.
Right. So what do you think if these orbs, it's been all over the news. We've talked about it on the podcast a couple times. Orbs out over New Jersey, some Air Force base closed down out there. Then last week we had Wright-Patterson Air Force Base close its airspace due to drone activity. So you're saying you think they just want to be seen and raise our higher level of consciousness or vibration. But my question, and again, this is just my science brain working, like I want to put it in a box. What's the intent of the end game?
Okay. Well, differentiate this. We're talking about orbs, and now you're talking about drones.
Well, it's being reported as drones, but the footage that people are showing are not.
Like the one was like a sun, right?
It was like a ball of light.
Yeah.
A white light. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, you have to remember that in the alien translation too, there's yin and yang, or there's good and bad. Some of these are from the races of the Nephilim from the Old Testament. And according to the scriptures, in the last days, these spirits will be released, and we're kind of in the last days of the return, or to the newness of the return of Christ. So all of this is coming out now. I mean, they're being loose. So you have to differentiate or discern between who these people are too. And when Dorie talks, and maybe she hadn't talked to you in the depths of this, but there are some of the races that are not for humanity, but they will appear to be. You know what I mean?
We talked, and I don't remember because we did a pre-show with Dorie that was, I think, about 2 hours, and then we did the show. So my mind can't wrap itself around where we had the conversation, but we did talk about that.
Yeah. So, but in anything, that's just like here as humans, you have to discern people. You can have people like me who are gifted, and they could use their gifts totally different than I do.
Yeah, like you, Brian, when I asked you, and you're like, it would be like that movie. Don't drive behind the log truck, and then
Final Destination. right.
Use it for
nefarious
negative purposes instead of the positive.
Well, again, and I say this, people are concerned about some of I use tarot cards now and then, and now I've incorporated them since the spiritual realm. The Lord came to me right before the COVID virus hit in January of that year and said, I want you to start incorporating pictures of cards and giving them to the people that you minister to. I said, okay. And so I just started doing it. Then in March, COVID hit, because I never had phone sessions hardly at all. Then all of a sudden I'm doing phone sessions. So now I just incorporate it, because now you get 3 sets of spreads of cards via text message or messenger or whatever, on Facebook or whatever avenue. So you have a visual of what we're talking about, and the cards are laid out, and I send them to you prior to the reading. And then I expose to you everything you're going through, not because of the cards. I don't need the cards to do it. They're for a visual, as well as you receive an audio through the email to match what we talk about. So you can reference back to that moment and see for yourself. Does that make sense? So I use those avenues. But people look at tarot cards as taboo or of the devil. Well, every Old Testament prophet was a diviner and divination. Yet people don't understand those cards that are used the Rider-Waite cards, the original deck, those have pictures of angels on them. Gabriel, Raphael. Gabriel on the judgment card of that deck of cards is blowing a trumpet where people are resurrected from the dead or come out of entombment. The angel Raphael is the lover's card that represents the angel who blesses relationships. So how could you be of the devil with cards like those? But my point is, sure, you can use tarot cards for whatever you want to use them for, but I can use a hammer to build a home or to beat somebody to death with. It depends on the tool, who's using the tool, and what the purpose of the tool is. Moses, when he first went before the Pharaoh, his first miracle was he took his staff and threw it on the ground and it turned into a snake. And so the Pharaoh called in his diviners. They did the same thing, but Moses' snake ate their snakes. So representing that the most high God, the most powerful God, was the one he was serving. And that's how I look at it. I don't care what tool, or I could use anything as a tool to help someone along their path. But it depends on how the person uses it. And we're talking the alien races, it's the same way. You've got to discern good and bad or whatever. You have to figure that out too on its own. But the way they're subtly coming to the world is kind of good. But as you innocently step toward the direction of that, watch who you're serving or who you're putting your trust. I shouldn't say serve, but who you're putting your trust in as you go. And that again has to do with research. You just don't. Oh, there's an orb, and all of a sudden there's people coming to me out of a spaceship, and they're really friendly, and I really like them. But learn about who they are and delve deep into the culture of them or to the history that you can receive or find from them to see which side they're on.
Well, and we've done a couple episodes about, and you brought it up earlier, Mike, but idolizing a false prophet, and we talked about the cult, the show that was on Netflix. I mean, Mike, you and I have talked about it, and I think weak-minded.
Did you watch that one?
No.
You need to watch that.
What's it called?
So, her name was Amy Caldwell, Amy something. But anywho,
I want to say Carlson.
Yeah, Carlson. That's right, Amy Carlson. But she was the founder of what was it? Love is God, or
I thought it was Mother of God. I've got my notes, but it doesn't matter.
Anyhow, but you just have to go back and watch it. But it's just a cult, and it's one of those things that she idolized. She had the celestial board, and it had like Tupac and Biggie and Donald Trump and all these people on it. But anyhow, it's just an interesting cult story. But
where I was going with it though is I think it's sad to me, and I think I brought it up on the episode because a lot of the people that joined that cult were people that went through traumatic incidences of some variety, and they were looking for hope and looking for community. And so I think you see that path and people will follow whatever it is they believe in. So I think that's kind of where it goes back to how do you be a good human and help people do the right thing when they don't know what the right thing is?
Well, it reminds me of a scripture verse. Jesus has said, we as sheep are led astray. And I think of I researched it growing up and trying to understand these gifts and making sure that I was at a place where people weren't following me, because that was one big part of why I haven't stepped into the public eye. People say, well, why don't you build a church? I don't want a church because I'm not here for you to follow. I'm here to guide you, but find your own self through what you experience through me, And I want to touch base here too, because I'm human and I have flaws, and I don't want my humanness to influence that. You understand? At any moment, I could psychologically go crazy, and if I did, like some of these people like Jimmy Jones with the Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah.
Another call.
I don't want to slip to somewhere else and people follow me off a cliff with that. So don't follow me. I'm not here to follow. I'm here to advise you. But the one you follow is the one in the New Testament, So set your eyes on that and keep your focal to the direction of that. And so that anything else that falls along the path, along the way of that, leads you to that, to him, not to follow just anybody.
And I think that's the hard part. People want enlightenment. And then you get into a weird realm where you can get into drugs and alcohol. And, ayahuasca is now getting popularized, and you go on an ayahuasca spiritual awakening, because I think people are looking for, how do I attain a gift similar to your own? And I want to talk to my ancestors. I can't, work with the crystals. I can't raise my vibration. Let me see if I can do it via this alternative means, be it ayahuasca or psilocybin or something else. And I think it puts people in a precarious spot. And I think that's where you're so helpful. Yeah. I'm confused and I don't know what I need to do. Well, I can't give you the answers, but let me give you a couple of directional pieces where maybe you can go to look.
Well, with these gifts and with the fact that I've been a gospel singer a huge portion of my life, people want to follow me. And I have people who seek me out and get my phone number, or if I'm working somewhere, they'll get the names of people around me and they'll befriend them, and it's creepy for me. You understand? But there are people, everybody is longing for a savior. But we're human. And, it's good to follow you and listen to your advice, but I don't have to live everything that you tell me or the way I need to live through you. You understand? So I'm always having that part of me pushed away, because I don't want to become that for people. You know what I mean? And that's been a great fear of mine through my whole life, that I make sure. And I have people say, well, why aren't you doing this? Or why aren't you? And I've been in the ministry, but I and these gifts overflow in the church, but in one way, and I don't have to tell them anything about myself. They just see it. And so it's just natural in church, because that's the atmosphere of a church. If you're in a position in the church like a minister, an associate pastor, or a youth minister, or a music minister, you should be gifted, and that's how I looked at it in the church, So, but then again, I don't want to step aside. Look how many churches there are and how many avenues of direction of people on even YouTube that you can follow, and they have such a tremendous following, And I don't want to get on YouTube and do a daily program to where all of a sudden I have this following. You understand what I mean? Because I don't want that attachment to me. You understand? Plus, I want to be Greg. When the Lord came to me when I was a kid and told me about all these things I would do in the future, and I would cry because some of the things he told me I would say and do in the 60s were unheard of talking about. And here I'm saying, well, okay, if you want me to do it, I'll do it anyway. But I'm doing all those things he showed me as a kid. But I always said to him, I don't mind doing this work, Lord, but I just want to be me. I just want to be Greg. And that's the wonderful thing about me. I'm Greg. I'm as common as a potato. And if God can work through Greg, surely he can work through you. You understand? And that's a great part of my message. I'm as human as you are. And yet God rose me up and put me in this place to where I'm able and available to help mankind. And he took this loathsome person, this humble person, and he raised him up. But I'm still the same common potato. I want to be a common potato. And I have a great friend named Michael, and he helps me see that. And I was sharing with the people earlier about, people call me on the phone all the time, and they'll want to start this conversation with, hi, Greg, how you doing today? And I'll say, I'm doing fine. And they'll say, well, I just have one question. Because every time people call me, people don't understand. I zoom right to where you are spiritually. And I just start talking about what I see. And then people call and bait that so that they're getting free sessions through me. And Michael pointed that out. You need to stop that, and you need to stay home and be human. Go out with me and let's go get a cord of wood and cut the wood up. Or, I bought a log splitter. It sat in the garage for almost a year. We were chopping wood by hand. And we used a log splitter.
I mean, it's a good workout.
I know, but I think, geez, how easy it is with, a log splitter. So now I'm in there cutting wood with a log splitter. But to be human is precious. to be able, I don't rarely drink, but last summer when his house is like a cottage, and it's 4 miles away from mine, and he lives in this serene country setting with cornfields and on about an acre and a half of property. But just to go over there by myself and be in the kitchen and have a glass of wine, I never had a glass of wine and enjoyed my life. But I deserve as a human to be Greg. You understand? And people will try to put me on a pedestal because, I'm part of me is my mom's side, who comes from Quakers. So they're very rigid and very spiritual. And these Quakers had these gifts, by the way. And my people were ministers in that church. And my dad's from the American Cherokee Indian side. So if you make me mad, I'm going to cuss you out. But if some of my clients, when I say that to them, they get offended and say, well, you shouldn't say those types of things because of your position. No, I'm myself, and I want to be me. And the miracle of this and these gifts is he is himself, and yet he's this spiritual person, or he's this gifted person. So, and that's the battle we have with the physical and the spiritual. You're two different things, you understand? And you have to bring those things together and come to a place within yourself that you're happy with both sides of you. You mentioned earlier something along the line of the spiritual and the physical, but you're two things. You're conscious, you're super conscious. You're actually three causal bodies, or three bodies to you. But these things you have to combine because the spiritual side of you wants to be like Jesus, and the physical side wants you to have everything you see in the world, a little bit erotic too in a way. So you have to kind of balance yourself and understand you're both of these things. You're human and you're spiritual, and you have to get to the point that psychologically it doesn't mess you up. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Are we covering things, or are we going off on tangents?
Well, I was just letting you go. No, we did a very bad job of sticking to the script, and it's fascinating regardless. So.
Right.
The one thing that we didn't talk much about is I just wanted to understand a little bit more about how your relationship with Dorie and how that came about and how you two kind of interact.
She's just a delight, She calls me sporadically. She's a regular, like once a month or twice a month, call for consultation. It's funny. But we've just, and everybody that I come in contact, including you two, become very good friends of mine. Notice it's not anything different than that. Don't you feel the same way?
Yeah.
And so everybody I meet becomes like this. And I just don't call you out of the blue because you're having a session. Sometimes I call you because heaven wants me to make the connection because you're going through a rough time, because I befriended you. And everybody to me is a friend that I care for or love. And that's another part of the Achilles heel with this, But Dorie has been a client for years, And how we first established, she was in college and studying for her dissertation and things, and going through relationship issues and things, and then she became so common. She would come over to my house and spend lots of time at the house, and she's just as funny as you.
Yeah, she's a hoot. She's just a ball of energy to talk to.
For sure.
That was wonderful.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you some of the funny things. I can't share some of these things because,
Fair.
You're right. We got to keep things. I can't share what clients share. But she's just been a delight, and I've watched her grow and come out of a place of disorientation, so to speak, and put her own life together. Again, in order to succeed and be where she is now, she's acquired a lot of knowledge to do that. And I think I shared with you on the phone earlier on the way up here that she's like a computer. I mean, she just takes in all this knowledge. And I told her years ago, you're never going to stop wanting certifications and diplomas, or pardon me, and degrees and things, because she has masters and things, But she just is this wealth of knowledge, and she has blossomed into so many different parts. I mean, she's a psychologist. The list goes on. She's a hypnotherapist. She can do anything she wants to do because she sets her mind to it and she does it. And all I do is just prod her to do the things that she sees, and she just does it. I don't. It just evolved.
Did you help her evolve her gifts though, or
Most
did
definitely.
she help you evolve yours in some sense?
I think everybody helps me.
Like when we're talking about vibration and raising vibration, she talked in depth about that. So if you put two people that have a high vibration together, what?
Yeah, you raise the vibration, most definitely. She just, yeah, for sure. And to answer that, I say everybody does that for me. Every reading I have is just as profound for myself because I'm ministering to myself of what I'm hearing that the people are receiving. It kind of reminds me of, again, they're working with Gregory here. And so every day God has to say, I need you to be here and do this. And so he gives these readings or these sessions for people where I see the reflection of myself in it. And I feel like it's like Groundhog's Day because everything I'm saying to people, I'm experiencing on my level in some aspect of that or different way of that. You understand? So with Dorie, she's opened my eyes to a lot of things because some of those things I just, don't look at. She's the one that's prodded me into the aliens and the Arcturians, and not just them, but there's others. But she's kind of got me opened the door for me to look to the direction of that. Just because, that's not my thing, but that's your thing, and I'll help you out along the path of that. So we've helped each other, but she's opened my mind to that, yeah. You understand? To look to the direction of that, where the norm of people my age would not look to that, Most people would say what she's doing is hogwash or not real. But no, what she's doing and what she set her life pattern to the direction of is real. And in her own way, she is helping humanity and learning to step out of her shell to help humanity in order to raise the vibration of our race or our people. You understand? So, yeah, we kind of feed off each other, but that's kind of natural. We're doing that now. And when we are together like this, again, where two or more are gathered, there he is in the midst of us, it raises the vibration of us. You're taking that elevator up in this moment. You understand what I mean? You can also feel that. You even mentioned that the first time I met you. Well, I was with that guy, and the next 3 days, I felt like I was on the mountain, and I was just in this place of contentment and rest. That's because you're on the mountain in this moment. We are at a higher level of vibration, not because of me, but because of who I represent, and that's the whole realm of spirit that's in this room that raises the vibration as well. You understand what I mean?
I think so.
So we're kind of like, this is kind of a good show. I mean, it just kind of goes impromptu everywhere, just like it did the last one. And I have to tell you that.
Well, we didn't have to worry about you being quiet. We knew that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit more loose this time, aren't I? So, yeah, and I enjoyed that so much to meet you guys because, I didn't know what I was expecting to do. I just came here. I was thinking I was going to give you, like most people call me and they said, well, can you do a reading for me? And so I thought, well, I'll just do a reading. But you guys kept asking, and I thought it was wonderful because you were bringing all these things out that people need to understand and hear so that they can maybe adhere to the advice or figure out their direction to the things that we talk about. This is what's wonderful about this program, is that it in itself is helping tons of people step into their true self, so to speak, because of the fact you two don't want garbage. You want factual evidence or tangible evidence. And that's what we need as a people. We need the reality of how we feel and what we believe. And how do we do that? Well, you can't do that if you remain under a bushel. So you step out from behind that bushel, such as Dorie just did, and you begin to shine. But who puts that bushel around us is society and its prejudice and its dogma, and learned behavior. So we have to step beyond that. And in the midst of that, we have to figure out who we are and quit letting the demons of our past interfere with the future of where we want to go, where we go back and look and think, oh, I'm unworthy. I've done this in my life. Who cares? Pardon me, but who gives a damn about what you did in the past? Because the past is gone. Take this moment and enlighten yourself to the future and learn from your past or what you came through and don't repeat it.
Yeah. The cool thing about this podcast, and I think, Brian and I have talked extensively about it, it's not so much we want people to believe everything that's coming out of our mouths. We want you to just basically open your mind to the different possibilities that are out there and to do your research and be a free thinker and make your own mind up and not just go with the status quo of, well,
and that's what I love about this show. That's what I was meaning by what I just said. The fact that, don't just take for granted, get out and research and look for yourself and discover. Part of this isn't just alien encounters or outer worldly experiences, but the outer worldly experiences that we're learning about help us as humans, so to speak. So all of this stuff that you are doing, you're stirring up that pot in order for people to begin to use their imaginations and not just sit stalemate on the couch and watch Netflix all the time,
Right.
But you're doing wonderful things to this program, really, because of how you approach it and just like you said, we're just trying to get you to look at things, basically, the reality of what they are.
I think Mike said it best. Just have an open-minded approach. We don't know what we don't know. And we also know that throughout history, so much of what we learned has been destroyed, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. So we don't know anything that happened because it's completely gone. So things that you're doing, is that something that we knew about and had forgotten? Now you're bringing it back into kind of the spotlight. So I think to Mike's point and to yours as well, and I think it's a great one, is just have an open mind. It doesn't mean that you can't disagree with it, but at least hear it out.
Yeah, I agree. And that's funny you mentioned that because we were talking about that last night, about how the records were all lost. And things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you yourself know that we are having this conversation just like the last time. But look how much you researched over the last time we met and discovered on your own if this was true or real or what placement it has in your life. It's brought about some type of change, or I wouldn't be here about the second time. But when we walk away again, all three of us are going to process what we talked about and look at it in a different way and apply it to our own lives.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've definitely went down some really weird rabbit holes.
No, you? No.
I know, right? Jeez Louise. Yeah, especially with Dorie, because Dorie is just a ball of energy. She's super fun to talk with, and she's super fascinating, just some of the things that she knows. So, like, I really went down the rabbit hole of, like, the density part just because I just really felt like, I don't know, I was just kind of latched onto that. And so she sent me all kinds of different videos, and I just went on, but it's all great. I mean, it's stuff that I would never, ever researched before that. So, no, I appreciate her for that.
Broaden your horizon a little
Absolutely,
bit.
man.
Well, and I look back at my life with Dorie, and it's been a fun, exciting time. I mean, these gifts have also guided her to they own a condo in Florida that they rent out, and that'll be their secondary home, if not their third home to the future. And they live in another home in the Dayton area. And her husband, Alex, is great. I love him dearly. But all these things as you're talking, I remember how she was led and guided to all these things through these gifts, including her relationship she's with her husband. Mm-hmm. I don't want to give his name away because she kind of wants to keep this thing disclosed. Mm-hmm. But, it's just fascinating. It's delightful to look back with Dorie.
It's got to make you feel good, right?
It does. It makes me feel real good. And I get these feel me goods all the time, but it's nothing really that I've done. I'm just relaying to you what the information that they hand to me, and just like it did with some of your folks sitting at the table over here, and how they perceive it or take it, is on them. And when we were sitting here, I'm still getting pulled to the direction I was at the beginning, getting pulled over here because I'm picking these folk up, you know. But again, I'm a minister, so I go to who needs the ministering or has the greatest need at the moment. It's just like, that's just what I'm pulled to.
So we would be remiss if we didn't lay out, how do people get a hold of you?
They can go to
helpmegregory.com.
helpmegregory.com is probably the best way, or they can call me on my phone number. But I'm also on Facebook a lot. I don't really do the other programs, even though our friend Katie wanted me to do Instagram. I'm 68 years old, and I don't want to fool with all that stuff. I haven't got that kind of time. So you're welcome to give my phone number out if you want, or put it on the thing too. And that's probably the best way is just text me.
Okay, that's fair. And then can you tell us, I know the last time we talked after we did the last podcast, I think you headed down to Florida for some book work. Any update on that or anything that's worth sharing?
That's kind of been put on the back burner for the moment.
Okay.
The lady that was working on the book took ill.
Okay.
And so I'm looking at a different avenue. We're working with another ghostwriter now to possibly pick that up. And I really want to do that. And there's a lot of things with that because, you know, we want to move forward. We want to get ahead. We don't want to be known. But there's a part of us that doesn't want to be. And so that stops the flow of that, you know, because in one way I want to move forward because I've always been told if you do a book, you're going to be known worldwide. And I don't know if I want to go that in depth with it. But at the same token, I want to share a book that deals with.
You want to help people.
Right. Well,
and that's a pretty good vessel to do it.
Yeah, and the book isn't a normal book that just talks about my life. It gives you the how-tos of how this works. I mean, it's a very, very great book, really, with all the information that she's already come up with. I mean, I have part of the book in my email box, but to read that, it's just mind-blowing. Because even the introduction that she wrote about me, it makes you want to read the book. I mean, and then the first chapter where it starts how Jesus came to me and how things developed. But there's parts of it that talk about my life, and there's instructions on how you can do this, and there's also people in the book who talk about their experiences. So there's kind of three parts that kind of flow together so that you're not so bored with the book that, you know, you're reading this thing here, and then all of a sudden you go to the next chapter and it talks all about the people with their insight on how it affected them, things like that. Because she's talked to tons of people who have experienced these gifts through me. And so that's going to help as well. But yeah, I kind of need to get it out. And one part of me really wants to work on that. It's kind of like the same situation with Katie, where she wants me to do Instagram, but I don't really want to know if I want to put that much energy into it. Not that I wouldn't put the energy into the book. And that's another fascinating thing, because when I went, I didn't want to go to Florida. The lady invited me down there, and I thought, nah, I don't have anything to talk about. But when I got down there was a time difference where I was. Like up here, it'd be 8 o'clock, it'd be 7 o'clock down there. It's in the panhandle of New Mexico. And so she got up at 8, but I get up here at 5:30, 6 o'clock to get my grandson to school. So I'm waking up down there that early, and she's still in bed. And so as I'm laying there, heaven comes to me, and they begin to unfold. People come to me from heaven. My dad came through, and my stepmothers and different people came through, and including the author's family. And so all I had to do was just get up and tell her what they said, because those are the questions she had for the day. It was pretty euphoric for me. But I delighted it. I mean, there's part of it that she received so much information. By Wednesday, she just couldn't take any more information in. And then Thursday morning, her dad came and stood beside the bed like you're sitting here in the physical, because the world's intertwined to me. So I saw this older man with his hands crossed like this, and he said, "Tell my daughter that you don't deserve to stay in motel, you need to stay in a fancy hotel. Because we were talking about the length of the book, and I was concerned that if we do lesser pages that it wouldn't take off. And in essence, that's what he was saying. You know, if you stop where you are, you're not going to get any further than you have been. But if you write this book, then you'll be staying in luxury hotels. It's basically the tune of that. But it was really lovely. And when I came back home, I had come back home to the norm or the mundane things, and I really hated being back. Because down there, I was so open to receive, and that's all I did was retrieve the messages and hand them to somebody else, and then she would call over friends, and I would be doing readings for them on the phone, and then I had readings while I was down there. So I was in my heyday there, where I wasn't confined by the things around me. We're talking about, I have a dear friend, she's passed now, but her name is Ma, and she has a commune in Florida, and she was a guru, and she died a few years back. But lots of people wonder why everybody serves them or worships them. But if Ma didn't have all these servants that took care of her, that she would not be able to focus her eyes on the world. Because when she was in a place like I was in Florida, and I understand this, that she was uninhibited and she could do the work that God set her out to do. I like that part of that, but again, I wouldn't have a church or a commune of people to serve me for the backlash of what it could cause the people. You understand what I mean? Because you can be so involved with that one guru or person that you lose sight of not just, you feed off of them every day. I mean, she came out of the temple every day and spoke to the people twice a day. And then she would go back to her place and do work. And she was up for the Nobel Prize at one time, Peace Prize. So here's a lovely lady. And again, when I first approached her or saw her, I knew who she was by the light I saw around her, and just knowing. So we became fast friends in an instant. So, you know, and that's another reason. But I would love to have the opportunity not to be concerned about the kids or life situations or have to clean the dishes and do this and that in order to get to my work, because I would just like to bask in the work that I do, because that's where I'm the happiest, you know, of giving of myself and seeing for people. And I could do this a lot more during the day if I didn't have to sit down during this time and offer all my clients a discounted price for this time of the year in order to generate money, because I'm a one-man band. And even on the way up here, I'm texting people, you know, copy and text and copy and paste, you know, emails that say, and I sent one to your wife and asked her if she would be kind enough to send it to maybe some of her friends. So I've been doing that a lot. But again, if I had people that took care of that stuff, then I could concentrate on the direction of God's people. You understand what I mean? So that's the downside of me not wanting to get too involved with things. But then again, if I were well known, I could afford that by the money that I've generated or brought in to pay people to do that.
Sounds like you need to get the book finished.
I do.
You need an administrative assistant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I actually have a good person lined up for that. So hopefully I can work on that. But then again, you know, life gets in the way of that. I come back, build a chicken coop when I got back. Michael and I built a chicken coop, an $800 luxury condo chicken coop for 12 chickens, and then the dog eats 11 of them. So we had to get another bunch of chickens. And so the chicken coop and, you know, the firewood and managing 2 households and the people within the households, that all takes up my time. And so therefore I can't get back to myself to write a book because my time is all absorbed. Again, that's just the way life is. And again, I mentioned to Mike, I said to him, you know, I've gained some weight since the last show. And because before I came here, I was going to the gym every day, and I was on a organic vegetable diet. And so I lost 50 pounds during that time, but I was able to tend to myself and had the room for that. Again, and you're saying in your mind, well, the thing is, make room for yourself so you can do the book, and that's what I'm trying to do now. And you were mentioning another thing about attunement is diet. the more greens you eat, the more it feeds the pineal gland. So there's all, and metformin is formed or generated through the pineal gland or pineal gland.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things come out of that, and to read up on that, when your listeners today go back and see the connection between the seat of the soul, or the soul, the spinal cord, and the pineal gland, and read up on that or study that or watch videos on YouTube about it, and have an understanding of how the third eye works. If you understand the scientific part of the biological part of this, then you can come to the understanding psychologically that you're built that way in order to see this way. Does it make sense?
Mind, body, and soul.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Gregory, we really do appreciate you coming on today. Obviously, fascinating conversation.
You're just a delight to have on.
Well,
each
and
time.
it's a delight to be here with you guys. I told Michael, I said, Michael, you need to come up here because these two guys are just like you. Michael's like 35 years old, and you'd have a great time with him. But he got a new job and he's absorbing the weekend. Or I think he would have came up with.
Fair.
Yeah, and then I probably couldn't get him away from you guys after the program because he'd want to talk to you for a million years because you guys have a lot in common. So, and his favorite beer is Heineken.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, the Heineken Light, I think, is what it was. Remember I brought those over? The Heineken to me is not very good, but the Heineken Light was really good. But anywho, all right. So if you want to reach out to Gregory, helpmegregory.com. I'm not going to put your phone number in there. They can just reach out to you on your website.
Sure.
We'll also probably throw something in there for Dorie as well, just since you guys work together.
Yeah,
That's good. And we'll mess around with your crystals, and if we get some good like photos or videos, I'll post it up on our social media after the episode. So
Awesome.
give that a check. Reminder, give us a like, share, subscribe. You can catch us on Instagram, Otherworldly Encounters, same as Facebook, and then the email is otherworldlyencounters2024@gmail.com.
Yep.
And thank you, fellows, for having me on the show. It's been a delightful time. Always
Absolutely.
enjoy it.
Well, thank you very much, Gregory. For all of our listeners, viewers out there, keep your mind open, your eyes on the sky. You never know what's going to fly by.
And with that, we'll catch you on the next one.